Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam rasulillah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm sure all of you have heard what happened in France after President Macron made that statement probably about 2 weeks ago that Islam is in crisis all over the world and that they're trying to make a French version of Islam, pretty much. And then it proceeded with closing down numerous schools and organizations, Islamic. And of course, these are not new for the Republic. However, it has increased now. I believe it was very close to the anniversary of Charlie Hebdo and what happened. And of course, these things seem to just keep resurfacing every now and then. And causing more problems and more controversy. But what happened is, specifically with that teacher, the history teacher, was something just ludicrous, right? And of course, we as Muslims, this kind of behavior is not something that people just take matters into their own hands. They go and stab someone, and then they cut their heads and they put it on social media. So no way are we condoning this. But at the same time, I think people need to understand, where does this behavior come from? Just like, where does the terrorist type of behavior come from? Where does the suicide bombing behavior come from? And again, it's not that we are saying, yeah, go, good job. No, right? What we're saying is that, why do people act like that? When a person, a psychologist, a doctor, a behaviorist, tries to understand the behavior of their patient, they look at, where does this spur? Is there a trigger? Is it just naturally induced from the inside? Is it just internal, or is there an external trigger? Now, of course, they correlate things and they research and they try to understand, right? When research talks about, for example, that this type of behavior triggers this, and this type of behavior triggers abuse, and this type of behavior triggers suicide, for example, or this type of feeling triggers suicide, right? People have no problem in understanding that, and they kind of relate to it and whatnot. But when a person talks about, like, guys, let's understand like what's happening with people who act like this. Why would someone do such a thing? Why would someone take a knife, stab this person, and then cut their head off and then put it on social media, right? And when you look at what happened, actually I've seen the picture of what this teacher showed the students, right? It's a direct, not only people say, why you react for an insult? It's freedom of speech. Well, it's freedom of speech as long as you are the one controlling that and define that. But it's more than freedom of insult. I think people just don't understand what the Prophet ﷺ means for Muslims. So, but let's just put the issue to rest. So from the Sharia perspective, in an Islamic country, in an Islamic state, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, what the companions had the understanding of. And when we look at the scholars, the traditional scholars, what they agreed upon as for the punishment for someone to insult the Prophet ﷺ. When we talk about insult, we find sometimes the liberal Muslims saying things like, well, look, people would say things about the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't cut their heads off and whatnot. And I think you need to make the distinction. People insult the Prophet ﷺ, people grab the Prophet ﷺ by the beard. Personally, they had issues with him. Umar Khattab would say something like, let me strike the neck of this munafiq, ya Rasulullah, right? And the Prophet ﷺ said, wait, Omar, wait, I don't want people to think that, Muhammad is killing his Sahaba, right? So, yes, people insult the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ didn't do anything to them, left him. People did all kinds of things. The Prophet ﷺ did not kill them. At one incident, a person put a sword to the Prophet ﷺ, and then the Prophet ﷺ made a dhikr, a loud dhikr, and the person dropped the sword. The Prophet ﷺ picked up the sword, and then he said, who's going to save you now? And the person said, ya Rasulullah, you're a good son of a tribe, and this and that. Try to, And the Prophet ﷺ just kind of let him go. So, yes, he is rahmatul alameen. But when does that stop? So we find, for example, in the story of Ka'b, and and what he was making poetry, and how he was insulting the Muslim women and sexualizing and objectifying the honor of the Muslim women and the honor of the Muslims and of the Prophet ﷺ. And then the Prophet ﷺ, we know the story, like the Orientalists and the non-Muslims. Come on, guys, we should not hide behind these things, right? We know this. This is part of our seerah. Actually, you find this in most of the book of seerah, even in the ones that have been somehow abridged. So the Prophet ﷺ ordered his execution, and the Sahaba went, one of them, and that's exactly what he did, right? And he brought his head back. We need to understand that because it is authentic, because it is something that happened. We need to understand the context. So in an Islamic state, country, that has happened in the history of Islam, what the ulama say, that according to the state, according to the judge, according to the law, according to it is basically execution for someone who goes to that extent to say these things about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just to understand the ruling, okay, and separate that from promoting terrorism and violence and people stabbing people on the street just because. No, there's a big huge actually difference when it comes to that. Okay, we need to understand. That's why a lot of people are making these mistakes, that either they say that Islam is too extreme and look at this and look what the Muslims say, or people start being so weak and so they don't understand the Sharia, and that's because they're on the other side of the spectrum, right? Everything has a context. That's why when the non-Muslims are attacking Islam, the Muslims are always on the defense mode. They don't know how to respond, and then they get caught with flip-flopping and wishy-washing and watering down things, and then they'll start saying like, oh, this is not authentic, and they start changing the deen because they don't know how to respond. They don't know how to respond, how to make sense, and how to connect it to something parallel to what the non-Muslims have as well. So you highlight the double standard. It's not like throughout the history of the non-Muslim that you could insult, for example, certain royalty. No, the punishment would be death, execution. In France itself, you would have so many laws of treason which you could get the guillotine for and execution, right? So the double standards are very, very apparent, very obvious. But we as intellectuals have to highlight, to educate as to why. I always say that we study Napoleon, we study Alexander the Great, we study Caesar, we study so many different leaders who've established, they've established civilizations and so on. But when we study Islam, where the Prophet ﷺ, the double standard kicks in, terrorism and all these labels come in, and the Muslims get all, embarrassed, and they get on the defense mode, and the non-Muslims are just pushing. As it says in the Bible, right, that you kind of look at the speck in your brother's eye, but you don't see the log in your eye, right? The double standard, the contradiction. So we've cleared out that in an Islamic country, the judge, the law, and there's an executioner of that law, which is the authority. Not just everyone takes it into their own hands in order to control security and to control the population, not just everyone. You're not judge, jury, and executioner, right? Because it becomes chaos. And the Prophet ﷺ was very clear on how you contain society and you avoid chaos and so on. It's clear, okay? But here, so that's put to rest, okay? The ruling is something that if people have an issue, it's not my opinion. You take it out with the fuqaha for hundreds of years and so on. And this is something known, and anyone can discuss and talk about this issue. This is not my opinion. This is something that's been around for hundreds of years in those who are the knowledge, the knowledge tank of Islam. All right, so that's one thing. But going back to the issue, like what happened, okay, again, this is not correct. The Muslims living in non-Muslim lands, friends, whatever, right? You are bound by some kind of an agreement. It's an aqd, your citizenship, your passport, you being in a country, especially if you're, first generation, you just, immigrated there, or whatever you might be in any way. If you choose to be in that country, you've paid taxes, you have certain benefits, and don't tell me that you're not taking any benefits. This is not about, I'm not a person who's, kissing to the non-Muslims or something like that. But this is the Sharia, is the Sharia. Islam is Islam. You're bound, okay? أوفوا بالعقود. يا الذين آمنوا أوفوا بالعقود. The Prophet ﷺ was never treacherous. The Prophet ﷺ did not commit treachery in any, with all the problems that they had with the kuffar and all that. In the end, the contract either expired, or those people broke the contract, or something was pushed and the contract was open, or whatever. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the end, allowed for the people, even then when Allah called for an end to the contract, allowed a period of time for things to be expired. It's not that you just kind of go and do your own thing, right? Because it causes chaos. Like, this is what they're asking for. This is what they wanted to. They started these campaigns of closing down masajid and, strangling the community with the justification. This is what Muslims are like this, and Islam is in crisis. And then here you go, you do something like that, and then they say, see, we told you. And it's always, when it boosts their popularity because they become the problem solvers, and they were right. See, this is what Islam is like, and don't worry, I'll protect you against Islam. You need to understand, brother and sister living in non-Muslim countries, that you have a citizenship act. You're a citizen there. You can say, oh, kuffar, people are burning passports. In the end, bro, you should have not been there, right? If you could have left, you could have made hijrah, whatever, right? But you took advantage of that system. It benefited you. Your kids were going to school. There's publicly funded things. You're living there. You were buying, groceries and smiling in the face of the grocer, be it man or woman, whatever it is. You've been living in society, growing in that society. The society has provided for you, whether you like it or not. This is the truth. And Islam does not allow to do this, okay? If you want to do something, join us, man, in terms of intellectually debating and fighting these people. It's easy to just take a knife and go cut someone's neck and then cause a problem for everyone, right? Keep in mind what the ruling in Islam is and who executes this ruling. I'm not wishy-washing, whitewashing, flip-flopping and being apologetic. No, I'm telling you straight up what the ruling is. But where's that application? Because that's fiqh, okay? Fiqh is from understanding. That's fiqh. Fiqh from understanding. To know what to put. Hikmah, where do you put it? When do you put it? When do you apply it? What's the context? In which environment? How and when? Right? And that's the problem when you have a knee-jerk reaction, an emotion, and so on. Yes, I know, we have to defend the Prophet ﷺ, his honor. Okay? But the people who have the ability to really make a change, those are the ones who are responsible to defend his honor, and sadly they don't. Right? And then you have these people coming from nowhere and just doing these things. And then the people say, aha, you've proven our point. Right? So allow us, people who have been around here doing this for 17, 18 years, 20 years, who know how to engage these people, to respond to them. It's not, trust me, the knife is not going to solve anything. You might think you've done something. You might have definitely scared people off, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to think twice about drawing the Prophet ﷺ in that disgusting manner that this person drew, this teacher. But in the end, what was done is not correct. Okay, what was done is not correct. The person did not obey the contract that he signed. He has killed another person. And I go back to the statement of that Sahaba who asked the Prophet ﷺ, if I find my wife with another man, doing zina in front of me, haram, zina, and I killed them, what will happen? The Prophet ﷺ said, we will kill you. You don't take things into your own manner. You don't just kill. You don't just stab. You don't just cut people's heads off. You don't just do this because you think, oh, but it happened at that time, the Prophet ﷺ. And I take this hadith as a endorsement and justification for me to do it, and to feel good for myself that I've done something for the Prophet ﷺ. If you really want to feel like you've done something for the Prophet ﷺ, then join the intellectual war, because that's how you're going to get the minds of millions of people, as opposed to scare a few others and upset more who are going to, kind of just roundabout and just come together and just come behind someone who's going to lead them in this kind of behavior and keep insulting and keep promoting. They're not gonna stop. They're gonna keep challenging. They're gonna keep challenging people over and over again. So you need to have wisdom when you engage these people. You have to have knowledge of Islam, of the Sharia, of the maqasid, of the priorities. Okay, Islam is not just black, white. No, there's so much to think and consider, so much content. How do we? Because I say so? Because I'm trying to apologize? No, because if you study the life of the Prophet ﷺ, you study the fiqh, and you understand what the scholars have said with the evidence, the authentic evidence according to the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, then you'll understand that this is not, just taken out of our own heads. This is the correct Islam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to the right path. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help our French brothers and sisters. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help people to realize the truth and guide them and to stop this kind of, nonsense, inshallah. May Allah guide the French people to stop this nonsense. This is nonsense. And what do you think what are you trying to get from this? What are you trying to establish by doing this other than hatred and violence? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.